My name is Lewis Smith. I'm going to give you a demonstration today. This is a live demo. This is a demo system, so everything that you see I've created. Like Intuit said, I've been in security for a while. Okay, so I'm going to get right into it. Once you're into the Metallic service catalog, as you know, ThreatWise is a service. So that service is presented to, whether it be a prospect or a customer. We now have a tile in the Metallic service catalog. Once you click on this, I'm already clicked in, this shows up. This is the dashboard. What you're looking at is ThreatWise, okay? Like most dashboards, it will give you, I like to call it risk at a glance. It will show you things that it will be useful, may be useful to you at a glance. It'll show you a timeline of events. It will show you top 10 events from our network intelligence sensor, which I'll talk about. How many traps you have, the trap types. I should also tell everyone in the industry, there's a couple of different words that mean the same thing. Traps, formerly, prior to the Commvault acquisition, we were TrapX. Trap meant the trap. Those are also, from an industry perspective, called decoys. They're also called sensors. Okay, so if I say one of those three words, talking about the same thing. And geolocation, which is also really interesting because, again, risk at a glance, you could tell what's going on. If you see something in a country that perhaps you don't do business in, well, that could be an indicator. That could be a red flag that, hey, we have a problem. What I like to do, I like to spend a little bit of time over here on threats that, yes.
Server traps, I see Linux, Windows. I'm not sure what the pencil thing is.
Yeah, that's industrial manufacturing.
Like an IoT kind of thing? Or?
Yep, and I'm going to show you all the traps. I'm going to show, I think you had asked that earlier. How many traps do you have? What kind of traps? I'm going to show you all of them.
Okay, good.
Okay. And if I don't, remind me, I will. So threat statistics. I like to spend a little bit time on here because I think this answers a lot of the questions that I heard already, okay? Anytime there's a threat, there's a risk, there's something in your environment that shouldn't be in your environment, there is a sequence in which that threat propagates throughout that environment. It's like the life cycle of a threat, okay? Now, bear in mind, threats could be malicious, they could be accidental, they could be by a person, they could be by a process. They come in all different shapes and sizes. But your job, company's job, is to protect that data, whether it be accidental or malicious, whether it be a person or a process, okay? Now, with most threats, typically, before you do anything, you need to see what you're dealing with, and that is a scan. You need to scan an environment to understand what's in that environment. Like Intuit mentioned earlier, as soon as something scans your environment, you're already on our dashboard. We, or you, are alerted that something is occurring that should not be occurring. Now, in a properly configured environment, and I think I heard this question earlier, how do you discern the difference between something that should be scanning and something that shouldn't be scanning? Well, that's part of the configuration. If I have an asset inventory control thing that's going to scan my environment, that's okay. I put a policy in for that to allocate for that. And if something starts scanning that has not been accounted for, I have a problem. Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah. So these threats, it's based on environmental data, or is it based on like MITRE CVEs, or like how?
It is, yes. I think yes is the answer to both of those that you said. Because when you look at the life cycle of the threat from a scan all the way to dropping down a payload and executing that payload, we are looking at everything in between, everything from beginning to end, cradle to grave, and everything in between. Okay, so let me just walk you through this real quick. I'm a bad actor. I'm a malicious piece of code. First thing I need to do is scan a network. Then I connect to something. I find something that's real interesting. Maybe I do an nmap and say, hey, there's a lot of ports open on this one. This is what I'm going after. Well, then I connect to that. Once I connect to that, what do? Whether you're a person or a process, you start looking for things. That's reconnaissance. Once you start looking for things, you're either, putting or getting, you're putting something on there or you're taking something off of there. We record that. An interaction is just that. I have dropped a payload onto this decoy, this sensor, this trap, and then I launch the decoy. Then I launch the payload. Okay. Like Indu had mentioned earlier, our sensors, our traps, our decoys not only look and feel like the real thing, we behave like the real thing.
You effectively have a state machine that kind of mimics or emulates whatever the real thing behind the sensor would normally be.
That's right. In fact, let me show you that. So we looked at the dashboard. I'm going to jump over here to analysis.
Can this integrate with other like vulnerability assessment tools like Tenable or?
Actually, absolutely.
Just getting it pretty resource
intensive. In fact, we did something real interesting where Tenable was telling us, hey, here are your high security risks. This is what's vulnerable. And we were auto creating traps based on the data that it was giving us. Okay. So here's an example to answer your question in terms of what does that interaction look like? Well, here is an infection level alert. This is kind of the highest up on the stack rank. And you could see over here, it was ransomware. And we allowed, in addition to collecting all of the forensics, right? Who was it, right? It was Win10.142. What's the IP address? What's the port? What were they logged in as? When did it happen? So on and so forth. We're collecting all that data, okay? What did it attack? Well, this is the sensor that it attacked. And what did it do? Well, it did everything I already told you in that stack rank. It browsed the directory, okay? It connected to that directory over Samba, SMB, okay? And then if you notice here, here's my directory it attached to. And remember, this is a lab environment. A customer would put their data, their important stuff in there that looks real. You don't want to put your real data in there. You want to put your fake looking real data in there, right? And if I scroll down here, because we are collecting every single event that occurs as that threat is interacting with us. You could see over here, the text might be a little small, but you could see at a very fast rate, you could see over here in the seconds, this is still in the 27-second mark. Look at it, the speed at which files are getting encrypted. Bingo, that's ransomware. Okay, we saw it, we alerted on it, and in this particular case, we're containing it. Because our sensors, or traps or decoys, behave like the real thing, we are allowing that attack to be successful. And when that attack is successful against us, our sensors, what it's really doing is slowing down that attack, giving companies time to respond to it.
So how is the response? Is it physical? I get an alert and I have to log in and see what's going on and then do something, or does this kick off a process with my security?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have an ecosystem. So if I come over here, I have a few things up and running here. So here is an ecosystem, okay? And you could see over here, I am porting data to, in this particular, again, lab environment, to 2 different SIMs. And if we look over here, I know I'm switching screens. Here's Splunk Enterprise. So in this particular case, in my lab environment, when there's an alert that gets generated, it's sending it to my SOC, my Security Operations Console. So whoever's in your SOC, they'll be alerted that, hey, you have a problem.
Okay.
Highly customizable. In fact, I purposely put this here so you could take a look under the hood to see, okay, well, what kind of data are you collecting? Everything that I showed you so far in that in the UI is available for export on that box in real time, including if you want an email alert to your phone to say, hey, you have an infection within your environment. If you're on the hook and you're responsible for the data within your environment, you could get an alert as soon as there's a scan within your environment to say, hey, I know my real scanners are whitelisted. What is this?
How many systems can be integrated with the alarm? You know, when an event is found, how can I connect? Or yeah, we have seen the Splunk integration, right? Mm-hmm. There are so many other integrations you plan or are already available in the.
Yeah, we have,
box?
yeah, that's a great question. We have a lot of integrations built into the box. So if we look over here, just as one example, here's a
Yeah.
sandbox integration. So sandbox is, because remember, we behave just like the real thing. So if you send me a binary, you send me a payload, I'm going to sandbox that. I want to know what it is. Okay, we're going to unpack that. We're going to say, hey, this is bad, or maybe it's not bad. We also integrate with VirusTotal to get, to get that signature, right? So, and you could see here, we are partners with Cisco, we're partners with Palo, so on and so forth. So we have a full-blown ecosystem that really allows you to put this in any environment that has, those type of tools within that environment for that type of thing.
If I can just add, so we also have a generic syslog way to send signals out, right? A lot of the SIMs out there, they're standardized or have standard formats. We're also adding support for webhooks and APIs. So there's a standard. A lot of these systems ingest these events in some standard formats, and we support those protocols and formats. So while we're continuously also working with our customers and what are the top tools they're using and bringing them as native integrations, we also support these standard frameworks. And going back to the previous question around like what actions can be taken, the way we work in the security ecosystem is, most of our customers, we recommend having playbooks or runbooks when they see these events popping up in their SOCs or in their monitoring system. So if they get into Splunk or some other SIM, you could have a runbook that says, if it's coming from ThreatWise, you see this, it says ransomware, isolate the host, or these are some things that we work with our partners and customers in helping them.
In looking at how you're doing the capture now at this point, because you've got one that's active, it's engaging in an active exploit. At that point, are you like, obviously you're sending out logging and you're sending out signatures to match against the database, but are then we basically like taking some kind of snapshot pointers that we could say, like, because if it's smart enough, it will destroy itself. And then we would, so what ends up happening is your signal goes away.
Well, in using the example that I gave you, let me show you this here. Let me find this again.
I mean, effectively, it's been found in it at that point would be spreading elsewhere as well. But
correct.
Just curious if there's a way that you can sort of like capture it, keep some immutable snapshots, so we could use that for deeper analysis, on-demand stuff after.
So you could see on the screen, we allow you to pull the JSON, the PCAP, all the files. So from an analysis perspective, we allow those teams to understand what happened. Okay, we allow that. In terms of allowing that threat to occur based on the way this particular trap is designed, I call it a hamster wheel. We're going to let that thing run. As it's encrypting, we're regenerating. It's encrypting. Now, to answer your other question or your comment about it's still going to spread. Now, Indu had mentioned earlier about LORs. Okay, when you and I'd like to show this quickly. This is a high-level architecture, and they say a picture paints 1,000 words, which is why I put it on the screen. So far, everything you've seen right over here are the threat sensors. Okay, the full system is optional, but a really good option. Okay, because it just provides that much more. I'm going to talk more about that. And LORs, also optional, but makes it a lot quicker, easier, more appetizing for that attack to hit that sensor. So I'll give you a case, an example in the case of ransomware. If I'm an attacker, one of the things I am going to attempt at doing is elevating my privileges, which means as an attacker, I am going to see things that you're not going to see on your own laptop. Okay, that's how that works. So one of the understanding that we're in the business of, preventing the spread of things like ransomware, I could put a LOR out there that, let's say, is a hidden map drive. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. And the hidden map drive will actually be really kind of the first path of least resistance for something like ransomware. So in a properly configured environment where somebody embraces the technology, says, well, you know what? I got 10 laptops here. Let me put the hidden drive on all of them. get the ransomware to me. The lures are directions for, again, that person or the process, whether it be intentional or accidental.
So on
and those
the
alerts.
screen you have, and just to go over the topology here a little bit.
Mhm.
So the environment I'm protecting is down on the bottom on the screen.
Nope, it's actually the slide that Indu had up earlier of you had a mix of real assets and you put deceptive assets amongst
Within
those
the-
real assets. So it's all kind of on the same
Okay.
plane.
Yeah,
So
but
what
you're
is
right.
the
So the top part, the management interface on the top,
Oh, that's here.
that's
Yep,
hosted by us in SaaS.
that's-
And then the sensors go into the customer's environment.
Okay, so what is the appliance?
The appliance is where the sensors are hosted. So if it's a virtual machine that has these emulation
On-prem and
sensors, hundreds of
cloud,
them. So it's like, for example, in the data protection land, think of it like a backup gateway, right?
Okay, okay.
So
And so we kind of said that the threat sensors are like an agent. Is Allure an agent as well?
Let me answer that question. I'm gonna speak to this and then I'm gonna show you in the product.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just talk to this and then I'm gonna show you. You'll have clarity over what is the appliance, what do the sensors look like, I
Perfect.
promise.
Awesome.
TSOC, just again, recap here. TSOC's in the cloud, that's the SaaS. That's reporting, that's administration, metering, et cetera, okay? The appliance, when you think everything we've spoken about so far is about sensors or decoys or traps. Those are hosted from the appliance, okay? The appliance, now with that said, let me come back over here. I'm gonna come to appliance. Did someone have a question?
Okay, that appliance is just a virtual appliance.
Correct.
It's a VM.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So you could see here, I have 3 appliances, 1, 2, and 3. They're all virtual appliances. In fact, you could see here, App NYC1, App NYC2, and I prepared everything, no smoke and mirrors. There's ThreatWise 1, ThreatWise 2. These are my 2 virtual appliances right here. They're sitting in my ESXi environment. No different than they would be sitting in a customer's ESXi environment.
Do they just push the traps and the?
Bingo, exactly.
Thank you.
So this appliance sits within a customer's environment, and in a single appliance, one appliance, you could have over 500 unique trap types, sensor types, unique. And the reason why that's important is because every environment is different. Okay. Now, to answer the question earlier, what kind of traps are there? Let's get into that. So I have my App NYC1. I have 3 traps being hosted off of this virtual appliance.
And the reason they can host different traps is that depending on what the sequence that the perpetrator is coming in on, you will give them the proper response for that type of trap.
That's exactly correct. So if I pretend to be a Windows box, I am going to respond like a Windows box. If I am going to be a Linux box, I'm going to respond like a Linux box.
And they can all happen in the same appliance as far as you're concerned. It doesn't matter.
It
It's just up to-
doesn't matter.
It's just someone
Exactly.
coming in on the endpoint and asking the right question.
That's right. I like to use the analogy of a dartboard. If I give you a dartboard and a dart and say, hit the bullseye, well, with a little practice, you could probably do it. We could all do it. But if I give you 20 dartboards and 1 dart and say, there's only 1 bullseye and the other 19 are fake, how likely are you to hit the real bullseye? Well, less, right? Less likely, because the real bullseye is surrounded by fake ones. It's the same thing within your environment. When you're protecting your core assets, your crown jewels, and you put fake assets around that look like the real thing, they respond like the real thing, you have created an early warning system that allows you to understand there's a problem, all while occupying that attack. You're slowing the attack by allowing that attack to carry out. Make sense?
It does. But just so we're clear, the response portion of this stops at the alert level, right?
yeah, if you're asking about remediation in terms of containing the host and stuff, yes, we want to make sure we have those alerts set up. We send it to the security monitoring systems, And our vision is really in bringing the data protection services and these signals together, right? So as some of these events flare up, we want to feed those signals back into our data protection backup copies. So either shutting down access to them or kind of taking additional steps if somebody is trying to reach these assets.
I mean, it's also slowing down whatever's going on, right? To some
Bingo.
extent. I could sit
That's right.
there and spin on this sensor forever,
Yep.
as far as you're concerned, right?
Yeah.
Sooner or later, it's going to go on to something else, but.
So
I was going to say, you almost like are taking a physical security approach and putting it into the cloud to protect digital assets. Because you think of like at a bank, right? Or a museum where they're protecting like the Mona Lisa. Sometimes you put a fake one there, and there's sensors and stuff all over the place. That's you can't see with your naked eye. So like that's what I'm like visualizing what this is.
That's a great analogy. Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Ocean's 11,
And as soon as you even enter into the room and see, oh, there are like 10 Mona Lisas.
Yeah.
At that point, we're already alerting whether they go to the
because they've already triggered that red
exactly.
laser. Yeah.
Correct.
That's right.
So do you guys, when you guys go to a customer site, do you typically, is this used by red teams? It seems like more of a tool for red teams than it is for protection.
You just asked what I was going to speak to.
Woo!
So we are in sync. Okay. Indu had mentioned earlier about red team testing, penetration testing, pen testing. When I try to talk to as many customers as I can, and they all say the same thing. When we do our red team exercises, right? That's their own penetration. How good is my security, right? They use third-party tools. They hire, ethical hackers, whatever the case is. They use third-party products. In all cases, I have never heard a customer say it was ineffective. They all say that, and I quote, "We see the red team before the red team realizes they've been seen," which tells them that this defense is working.
And even after the red teaming exercises are done, these sensors we recommend they are in customers' environment, right? So it's not just for the red team exercise itself, but even beyond that, they're going to be there in their environment always and detecting things as threats come in.
So how often are they refreshed? Because I can't believe that if you ran into this one time, you wouldn't find a way to try to figure it out the second time. So like, how often are these?
As often as you want. We have like if we come over here to asset discovery. And by the way, I didn't forget your question about the sensor types. We're going to get to that, I promise.
Whatever you do.
So if we come over here to asset discovery, we have the ability to do that exactly what you just asked, right? Do you want to scan what's in your environment? In fact, let's actually get into answering your question. I'll answer your question along the way. I'm going to come in over here. Let's build a trap type, okay? Sensor type. One of the first things you're going to see over here is how do you want to create that trap? To answer your question, well, do you want to do it automatically? And you could update that. I'll give you a rudimentary example. I have an office, and everyone in the office runs Windows 7. So I have Windows 7 traps. And then over the weekend, we upgrade to Windows 10. That's going to scan the network, say, hey, wait a second, there's no more Windows 7, but now there's Windows 10, so let me update the trap.
Okay.
So you can update the traps without eyes on glass. Make sense?
That's cool.
Okay. And moving over to your question. So we're in by the way, everything I'm showing you could be automated. So I'm obviously pointing and clicking so you could see, but everything I'm showing you could be automated. So time to deployment, time to value is incredibly fast from a scalability perspective. So you determine, okay, how do I want to make the trap? Then you come into, well, what trap would you like it to be? Okay, do you want it to be a workstation? Workstation could be Windows, it could be Mac. Do you want it to be a server? It could be a Commvault backup server. It could be a Windows server. It could be a Linux server. What type of networking, right? Is it a Cisco shop? Is it a Juniper shop? Okay, maybe you're dealing with healthcare. Healthcare is really significant. The FDA doesn't allow you to put commercial software on medical equipment. So how do you protect it? You can't. But when you have machines that save lives unprotected because of, remember, code, malicious code doesn't care. Doesn't care that that machine is saving someone's life. It's just designed to penetrate something. But when you put these sensors around that equipment, you will know right away that, you know, something tried affecting this. In fact, there was an earlier TrapX days, there was a case study where there was malware in an operating room, and our solution caught it, saving, you know, saved lives in that respect, because if that stuff goes down, because you can't put commercial software on it, you're in a pickle. Okay, so medical, industrial, that's another big one. Shop floors, forklifts that get updates over the internet. How do you protect that? Hard. But we can create sensors that look like anything. In fact, if it's not here, I'm going to get back to this in 1 second. We have this utility called BYOT. It's real easy. BYOT, if I hit this plus button, you give it a name, forklift. You give it the IP address. We reach out, we scan it, we create a sensor that looks just like it. Put a few of those around the real assets, and now again, you're slowing that attack. You're confusing the attack.
What if they pick the real ones though, and don't pick the fake ones?
I'm glad you asked. Can I get back to that? Because I
Yeah.
still want to show,
I'm good.
but I'm glad you asked. What happens if they hit the real one? I'm going to come back over here to configuration. I'm going to come in over here. So let's say in this particular case, I pick a Windows server, okay? Keep it simple. I'm going to click next. Well, then we have to decide, well, what kind of Windows server do we want? Do we want a 2003, an 8, 12, 16, 19? What do you want? We have the capability and the granularity to behave like pretty much anything in any enterprise network. And it changes. What does that mean? Well, this here is the service page. And you could see over here, well, we have an A/B setting, FTP, Oracle, SQL, etc. What does this mean? Well, these are the services that resemble a Microsoft Windows Server 2008 R2. So from an authenticity perspective, we are authentic to that attack.
What do you have in the VMware platform ecosystem in your sensors?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Emulating hosts and endpoints, like management endpoints of the different VMware platforms.
Oh, like ESX and others?
Yeah, ESX, vCenter, Tanzu controllers.
So if I wanted to create, that's actually a good question. If I wanted to, so I have an ESXi host over here, 1.103. If I wanted to create a trap that looks like this, I would say, hey, it's my ESXi. I'd point it to 1.103. It would scan it and it would create a trap that looks like that. So depending on the ports that are open, the fingerprint of the underlying operating system, which is probably some variant of Linux, it would look like that. So if I do an Nmap against my ESXi, or I did an Nmap against my trap, should look the same.
I think
Is these
you
all,
had a question.
Where are these templates coming from? Like, I'm sure that you could throw something at it that it hasn't seen before, right?
Bring your own threat window, right?
They
Yeah.
scan the machine,
Right, okay.
get all the stuff.
And I think you had a question.
Nathan.
Yeah. So basically, when we were talking about like 2003 and Windows NT, I can try to make sure I phrase this correctly. Having a way for a sensor to mimic that is kind of an awesome deal. So please don't, just because it's end of life, please keep that around, because I'm pretty sure like that's going to be priority one when we talk about like slowdown.
Yeah.
If they'll probably own it pretty quick, but they'll also
Absolutely, they'll own it quick.
they'll also own the sensor, and so you'll see both of them real quickly, and you'll be like, oh, now I know something's in my environment. And I
Yeah.
kind of like that as kind of like, maybe I should spin up a 2003 in my environment just as a
Yeah.
honeypot.
Exactly. And a lot of these,
Yeah.
the organizations that still run them. A lot of
I've seen
manufacturing.
organizations still running Windows 95. I swear.
Mm.
And
It's
probably
shocking.
payroll.
It's shocking.
And it
some of
virtualizes.
these,
It's crazy.
and some of these older instances are not updated with all the latest security patches, so they're even more vulnerable in some sense.
A lot of
Voting machines. example.
yeah, large like
It
really
is.
large manufacturing organizations. A lot of their I guess computers, servers that are in the plants themselves are running really, really old
right.
OSs.
And think about this. You could protect all of that without touching any of that.
Okay.
And that's the problem with, hey, well, AV doesn't support 95 anymore. You know, NT is deprecated. So whatever agent I was using doesn't run on it anymore. It's not supported anymore. So how do you protect that stuff? It's really hard.
Cut the hard line.
So we can protect all of that without touching any of that.
Well, I mean, not to be pedantic, but kind of draw a line between protect and detect. I mean, at this
Okay,
point,
fair
you're protecting through obscurity by keeping them, pay attention to this waving hand while I do real business over here.
Well, they're being proactive.
Yeah. So so look, I mean, yeah, we
Those are-
have those early signals, and then for the data protection admins to then maybe take some actions. But as we evolve this and bring these technologies together, we'll automate some of that. Once you get these signals, they'll be drawn into our data services, data protection services, and we might take some automatic action like cutting down access to those backup copies, right? If you see that. The other thing, the other important thing is recovery is important, right? When a breach happens and we're recovering, customers need to know where their clean copies are. And this helps them because we can then mark like, hey, we saw an attack happen yesterday at 4 p.m. starting. So we think that any recovery copies after that could be compromised, but we believe before that are clean. So that's another important kind of vector that helps customers in their recovery place.
So,
Well,
okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, but, and forgive me if maybe I'm getting ahead of another portion of the demo, but I mean, I think, are you doing direct integrations to any of the IDR systems that are out there that can do that response at this point? Or am I getting into roadmap where you guys control the data protection layer? Are you doing anything, I start seeing scans across all of my sensors all at once. Let's shut down or lock down the repositories. Are we doing anything along those lines?
Let me piggyback on one because we're thinking the same ways again, Gary. So and you guys are new to Commvault, right? But so I'm interested in if you guys are Commvault people or Metallic people, but also is there stuff that Commvault brings to the table that can be called to do some of the things he's saying, like isolate and that kind of thing? Like there must have been a nice marriage situation here.
Yeah, look, Metallic is built on Commvault technology. So everything that's available in Commvault, we can bring it into Metallic. So the entire Metallic stack is, obviously we offer it in a SaaS delivery format, but it's built on Commvault's technology stack.
And so is there Commvault technology that can isolate servers or do you leave that to a security platform?
Yeah, so if it's production environment, isolating production systems, that's not something that we do. We believe we are an important cog in the security ecosystem, and we really give those early warning detection signals, but I expect like the CrowdStrikes or Carbon Blacks or some of those guys, we recommend playbooks and runbooks based on the events that they're seeing so that these systems can then take action.
I come back to the museum scenario in my head.
I love that example.
Where you're being proactive so nobody steals your goods, your crown jewels. Hence the crown jewel reference you guys keep referencing. It finally clicked in my head. Yeah, Ocean's 11 or some
Love that movie.
or some some heist at a museum where there's always a replica, and you've got the other measures to alert to trigger some type of
this is
loading.
Our own George Clooney is here.
I know.
I definitely emulating what Jim was saying, just not because I'm also a pedant. And yeah, using the word protect is a risky one. But very
Fair
much
enough.
we are
Yep.
actively detecting and then able to trigger the next phase. Because I've talked to a lot of folks, especially they're like, oh, can we just automate this next response and make everything immutable? No one will do that.
Yep.
Because there's so many things that can trigger this that
Right.
you accidentally bring up your Qualys machine on the wrong IP, and then that's it. Your entire network gets shut down because
Nope,
you
you're
automatically- so
100% right.
But there's cool stuff. I like the idea that
Yep.
assume, I mean, the whole point of zero trust, assume it's compromised.
Mhm.
Have to assume it's compromised. This is great. As you say, like, yep, we're in the midst of being compromised
Mhm.
over here.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a really solid approach.
We feel we can shrink the window for customers when they're attacked. And that's a big deal in helping them respond faster.
Because there's going to be in the Commvault side, then there's stuff that's at rest, there's
Yep.
stuff that's encryption and stuff that there's
Right.
reasons why stuff should be
Yeah, I mean,
encrypted. There's reasons.
The
why
data
it shouldn't.
protection backup is our scope, so we can help protect that. Production systems, we're not gonna, do anything there. We're gonna let the customer security tooling kind of have their runbooks to take action.
So let's do this. You had asked earlier about, okay, what happens if they actually
Hit
hit the correct asset? I'm going to use your Mona Lisa example because I like that. So I'm going to close out of here. So what happens? What happens if? Well, I showed this before, but everyone missed this little circle that I'm circling over here. This is what we're going to talk about. This is called the network intelligence sensor. Okay. So remember, just to recap, I know you walked in the door. That's the scan. I know you are on the floor where those Mona Lisas are. I know that. And I know you're looking at Mona Lisas. Okay. But what happens if you get out? What happens if you get the right one, right? Well, that's where the network intelligence sensor comes in. That's this piece over here. So let's say grab the right one, not the 10 fakes, but the right one. What the network intelligence sensor does, and that's this top 10 events over here, we will see you on the way out and collect all the forensics on the way out. So we're still tracking that threat, even if they get the real one. So if I come over here to analysis, and you could see it says trap, because everything we've been talking about so far has been traps or sensors or decoys, right? I'm going to come over here. I'm going to change this now to NIS. And you could see over here, hey, there was an event. Here's my IP address, 142. This is where it went. This is the port it went over. Okay. I am seeing the source of the problem. I am seeing the destination of my data.
But
Okay.
you might not know this is whether it's valid or not. You'd have to have some sort of way of whitelisting what the right outbound traffic will look like or something like that. Is that?
Perhaps, or I'll come back to the dashboard. Let's say, I'm going to give everyone a true story and then I'll come back to this dashboard. I was in a hospital in Long Island and we were looking at a solution and they saw data going to China, little hospital. They said, we don't do business in China, right? The moral of the story is, even at a glance, remember I called the dashboard risk at a glance. At a glance, perhaps I don't do business over here.
Italy.
Italy, yep.
Wouldn't do business with the shady people either.
No. You know,
Who would do business?
actually, that is an indicator for me that I still have data that's useful to me to understand what may have gone on. What we're trying to do is look at it from cradle to grave, covering all the what if scenarios in the middle, right? So we have LORs, just to recap. LORs make it real easy, real inviting for a threat. Again, person, process, whether it be accidental or intentional, to get to us. We respond like the real thing. We do just like the real thing. But what happens if they take that Mona Lisa? Well, we still working that way up the stack rank. We are still able to give you useful information, forensics, based on what's occurring. So again,
Louis,
from an
you haven't
early
told
warning.
us about the lures. You haven't shown us how the lures get, what kind of lure options there are.
Okay, I
Are they
will.
shiny and spoon-like? or
They are
colorful?
very shiny and spoon-like, and I'd be delighted to show you how shiny they are. But does that answer the question
Yeah.
earlier about what if? Okay.
And just to add to that, in reality, as they get to the real assets, they just don't land at the real assets, right? There's a recon that happens.
That's
There's
right.
activity before that they're most likely they're scanning the environment. All those activities will, if we have the sensors put in that environment, they will be flaring up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll see it early in this stack here. You'll see it early.
If you see that activity on the network going on, you
Mhm.
still need human intervention to prevent the attacker to actually go to the real thing. Like you have to shut.
Yeah,
it down.
either human either human action, or like I said, we send those events to the Splunk or other systems like EDRs and stuff. And a lot of these systems, they have responses or playbooks that you can code in, that if you see an event with this criticality from here and so on, take this action. And they're a lot of them are now called SOAR, which is security response systems. So they respond to these kind of attacks. So we don't want to replace those systems, because these are, most customers have these in place. We want to leverage them.
We want to feed them intelligence.
I got that. Another question on the intelligent part,
Yep.
second part. So how do you monitor it? Because I get the, for the sensors part, you have visibility into those. You can see what's going on. How do you see what's going on with real assets, with real virtual machines?
When there is like a phone home, okay, as an example, we would be monitoring that traffic. We have our own threat intelligence feeds. And if we see something that's going out, we're able to correlate that with the other data that we have. It's
So you
based on
sit
our
in
own.
the data path
Yep,
or the real
correct.
asset somewhere.
That's right.
I can ask a fun question.
Sure.
Because there's even a lock on a police station door, which people always laugh at. They're like, it's a police station, you're open 365
matter.
days a year, but you still need a lock on it just in case. What's the lock on this? So that you would notice that some guy from Albania is sitting on your console, even though he's sitting 5 feet from you right now. So like, if I were to get at this information, I have an incredible amount of intelligence, and it's like all it is,
Yeah.
one sniff URL away.
Yeah,
I can take that. So so this intelligence is built into our SaaS platform, right? So we have, as Isabel talked about, we've been, both hardening our security from a platform perspective, and also providing security services, and especially most recently with our FedRAMP certification, we had to demonstrate like 420 plus security controls that we had to put in place to protect our SaaS offerings, right? So we have monitoring systems in place. We have anomaly detection capabilities. We have those and access controls all locked up. And I think, Ranga, you're going to talk about this a little bit as we conclude, but our platform is hardened. Our SaaS, we take security seriously, both in our data protection offerings as well as with ThreatWise. And, we have the most up-to-date, all the leading technology in place to kind of help protect us or detect us from any untoward incident that our service itself is compromised.
I would assume that is it sort of like two-factor and multi-factor
We have-
box
yeah,
default,
absolutely.
or
Yeah.
I say this just because I appreciate the technology. Ask the guys at Uber how good their technology protected them. Hi, this is Pete from the help desk. Looks
Yeah.
like you've compromised. They gave away the password.
Yeah,
With respect to every technology vendor, we always have this thing. We do all these fantastic things, and like I said, all I got to do is find out what that URL is,
no,
and then wang goes e-tango.
look, we
I'm an
are
actor.
we are in the business of protecting customers' data. So we take this extremely seriously, and we have layers and layers of controls built in. We follow the NIST frameworks. We have compliance. We follow all the compliance standards. And you don't have some of those basic checks like MFA and stuff, you won't even get, forget FedRAMP. You won't even get PCI or any other certification. So we have gone through, all those certifications and compliance checks to ensure that the service that we offer is completely secure.
Kind of on the lines of that, did your software notice or guess protect or detect high amounts of traffic during the initial invasion of Ukraine, when the Russians were pretty much coming after us digitally? Did you see an increase in attacks through your customers?
So, some of our solutions are offered in some of the impacted countries, and we have an official policy wherein, in terms of whatever we could intimate our customers, or we took those, steps necessary to help our customers. But in terms of, intelligence and stuff, there's obviously a lot that's been happening. But yeah, wherever we can, we have helped our customers if they were impacted.
We did see though a lot of customers asking for data to be moved out of certain places to protect it. So not necessarily into the attack, but also proactively trying to protect it in different ways.
Yeah, just because the industry itself, the security industry, there was an increase of digital attacks.
Yeah.
During, I guess, like the first week.
Yeah, and it's a unfortunate situation that's unfolding, and wherever we could have helped customers with that, you know, and it's always our mission and to help protect their data, and we'll take every step moving forward to ensure their data integrity.
So where do you store your platform at?
Our
If you could
service,
say.
our service is hosted on Azure. So we also leverage in addition to all the controls that we have, we also leverage Azure's security best practices, and their well-defined architecture in that sense that they recommend for all services.
Show us the ThreatWise screen for your service.
For the Azure service,
Yes.
I would have.
No,
to
that's
defer that
something
to
we
someone.
cannot. I mean, so one is, you know, our.
I don't even have access.
This would be this would be a breach of our security best practices because we have dedicated
address.
Nice try, Red.
Notice I look.
Worth a shot.
Yeah. So
Flags start going
very we have extremely strict policies around access to our Azure accounts. It's not something that we take easily.
Show me the lures.
Lures. Let's go to lures.
Joking about security, geez.
Okay,
man.
so I'm going to go back to appliances. And here's my 3. I'm just going to pick one at random. And we're going to go back into the screen we already saw. In fact, I'm taking you to a place we've all been before. The services page. And if you notice on the right-hand side of the services page, we will have the lures.
This is an easy question. I know you
Yep.
talked about VMware. So what other hypervisors are supported? Hyper-V, AVM, or is it just primarily VMware?
Yeah, I mean, typically, you know, with our BYOT technology, all of the hypervisors are supported. And then we provide more granularity in terms of like the virtual machines themselves that customers can use as sensor content.
Okay. So like for VMware, for the appliance, it's just like an OVA that customers download to make it nice and easy, or is it?
So the requirement is very small, but to answer your question, the requirements on the are very small. So I had mentioned earlier, up to 500 unique traps on a single appliance, virtual appliance, 16 gig of RAM, 40 gig of hard disk space. It's very small, okay? But the nice thing about the OVF is you don't even have to worry about that. We build it. We build that environment. We put the NICs in, we put the RAM in, we put the CPU in, and it just, you give it an IP address once it's established. So it's not only light, but it's easy. Okay, services, here we go.
So how do you deploy these sensors at scale? I cannot imagine people going through this.
No. This
different
is nice to show you, and even for like POCs and stuff, but we have bulk deployment. It's also built in. And as soon as I show you this, I'll show you that.
Can you do this infrastructure as code?
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, API, yeah, of course, yes. In fact, it was all API driven before it was put into the product. So it was our kind of toolkit that became productized. So yes. Okay, and I'll show you that. Please remind me. Tokens. So over here, service types depends on the server type that you have. So this is a 2008. Here are my services. This is the description. Highly configurable. I'll give you an example. FTP. So if I'm a hacker, I do an Nmap. 21 is open, and it says, you know, Commvault sensor. Like, no, that doesn't work. It needs to say your company name. This is an authorized system. No act, right? We've all seen the banners that say do not enter, right? You could put your company's banner on the FTP. So if I try FTPing into what I think is a real FTP server, but it's not, again, it's slowing the attack because I feel like I hit the jackpot. Not only was I presented with the company banner, but I was able to get in and see company data, even though it's all fake, right? That's what the configuration does. Here are the tokens, okay? So as an example, I mentioned earlier about putting a hidden map drive, right? A bad actor is going to see data that you won't see on your own laptop once they elevate those privileges, okay? We could put that. That really accelerates getting that ransomware to us versus someplace else type of thing. We have deceptive file capability, okay? What is that? What is a deceptive file? Spin data, deceptive file. This is the ability for you to put your data, fake data, but your data on our sensors. When you think
Take
about
statistical representative of some data file or something like that, and you represent random data using that statistical representation.
That's right. So I'm a bad actor. I'm trying to figure out social security numbers, whatever it is that I'm after. And I find it. I hit the jackpot. But did I really? No, because it's fake data. So that's also a token. Again, remember I said decoys, sensors, traps, tokens and lures are the same thing. There's a lot of words that describe the same thing. So we're talking about lures, but it's a token. And I share that with you. This way, there's no confusion. Okay.
And so these tokens would be Windows Server 2008 R2 tokens.
Exactly. They would be specific. That's right. So here's another one, browser bookmarks, browser credentials. We have a VPN token in our public trap, which resembles a VPN. So when you think about, and we released this kind of at the height of COVID when everybody started working from home. So I have a token on my machine that says, hey, if I'm at a Starbucks and I'm on a Zoom and I don't know, have an easy password, someone hops onto my machine, first thing they're going to say is, how do I get, okay, this might be useless, but how do I get across the VPN? We have a VPN token. And as soon as somebody clicked on that token, we would get notification. So the tokens change based on the trap type, the sensor type. Okay. And they're highly customizable. Again, that's the configuration piece over here. So you could see over here, you could create custom certificates, custom web pages. You could upstream if you wanted to upstream, so on and so forth. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So the mass deploy option.
Yes, mass deployment.
As you can see, if you hover, you can hover over there. So there's a mass deploy option as well, where customers can,
So where I'm circling.
Yeah.
And it looked just like the BYOT. It's a very straightforward thing. And I apologize. It looks like something is occurring where my pages are just spinning. So
the demo gods have woken up, but that's fine.
I think that was someone with the cane pulling us off. Yeah, they're on too long. No, but yeah, the mass deploy is built into the into this thing. And we could also randomize the mass deployment. So if you wanted to change the IP address every 5 IP addresses, you could do that. And that was really important. So it's not just like, hey, we deployed a bunch of sensors and it's IP address 192.168.1.1 to 1.254. It's not like that. We could completely skip, randomize, etc. So again, it's all about the authenticity of when it's on the network, it looks real.
And we are continuously enhancing our product, right? We want to make it easy for customers. And, that's why we introduced this in SaaS with Metallic, the deployment, deployment options, whether it's pre-packaging, so these, as we progress through our evolution, we're only going to make it even more easier for customers to deploy and consume this technology.
So you mentioned to randomize kind of the IP addresses and stuff. Is there also intelligence in there that'll randomize, but also mimic your production environment, so that you're not injecting, I don't know, a Windows Server 2008 when you don't have any in your production estate?
So that would be earlier when I showed you, I'll show you again. So if I come over here to asset discovery, actually, let me come on the trap type itself. So if I come in over here, I have 3 options: manually create a trap or auto create a trap. The auto create a trap, the asset discovery, would be based on the results of a scan. So yes.
Got it.
Okay. And here was the page of the mass deploy.
Yeah.
Luis, do we have any Commvault servers sensors deployed here?
I can show that to you, sure. And that would be under our server settings. So if I come over here, and we also have in the full OS, the backup service as well as the firewall service. So if I come over here to type servers, oh, this is the wrong box, I'm sorry.
We're closing in on time here. So
yeah, I don't want to go down the
couple-
rabbit hole, but presume, do you have like instances of images where there are like patch levels? Because we know like, oh yeah, Heartbleed came out or whatever, you know, botnet vulnerability came out and there was a known thing where like, let's go back to an old version and push it out there just to double check, make sure we're clear. Like, because you're going back to 2008,
We do. In fact, like the last big one was like our Log4j. I could actually show you what that is. Here's the Commvault backup server. So this one here, again, brand new with the release. And this is in emulation. Remember, there were two. There was the LoRs, the emulations, and the full OS. So the Commvault backup server is both on the emulation. So if you want quick, get it out there, you know, at scale, put a lot of these out there, you have that capability. But also on a full OS, let's say you want to put our small agent on that Commvault backup server, we'll also monitor the backup service as well as the backup firewall service. So you're really getting the best of both worlds, which, you know, again, speaks to that integration.
In your demo, I only saw IPv4 addresses, so I want to make sure it's IPv6 as well capable.
Yeah, IPv6 is it's in the roadmap. We're working on that, so it'll be available in our next version.
Okay, thank you.
So speaking of roadmap, and I get that Metallic is a Commvault product, and the artist formerly known as TrapX is, you know, what it is.
ThreatWise.
But there are other backup vendors that are out there. If we think about this as a separate thing, and all we're doing is detecting, is there thoughts of emulating other backup services? Because it's not just Commvault that's getting attacked.
Yes.
Would love your feedback.
Yes.
Would like to see that?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, because we can presume that there may be multiple backup or multiple data protection services that are in any single enterprise, and so there's a good.
That's interesting because that's definitely one of the thoughts that we're exploring. But if you could show how the Commvault emulation works,
yeah,
because you know,
and
the simplicity with which you can pretend to be Commvault in order to protect Commvault is very interesting.
So the this would resemble the Commvault backup service running on a Windows Server 2016. These are the services that resemble that server. Okay. So you have your backup firewall, which I had mentioned earlier, any sort of RDP, SMB, same type of thing. If you wanted to put specific data on there, you have that capability, so on and so forth. Is this what you were referring to?
You know, the Commvault trap, the Commvault backup trap.
Yeah, this is the Commvault trap. That's how it's configured, and once deployed, if there are any events that you can show. If not, then
I don't have those set up right now.
That's fine. But it's a very simple interface. It's a wizard interface. It's also API available, and you know, great point on extending this capability. We have all the technology in place to be able to easily replicate you know, other systems as well. It's something that we're considering. But
presumably you would just you could scan the object in production, and then the emulation from there would be able to capture it.
It's huge though, because then you talk about the run book. Because this is what ransomware goes after first.
Yeah,
is the backup servers.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so like if you could do that, I mean, that's to me seems like a huge selling point, no matter which backup system you have.
So that's the number one feature we implemented as part of bringing it as a ThreatWise, to add this sensor content resembling Commvault servers.
Are customers able to subscribe to just this service and
Yes.
the rest of the Commvault services?
Yes. So this is a standalone service. It can be subscribed separately. And I had a couple of slides if you were to, you know, switch the screens.
I just have a quick question. So when you deploy this Commvault LoRa, does it actually deploy the executables, or does it just spoof the services?
Just spoof
What
the
does it look
services.
like? Okay.